Hello, my name is Monica Kamendeur. This video is the recording of a PUM remote advice coaching for the Kousba municipality in the north of Lebanon. The topic is vermicomposting for small farmers in order to use the organic waste of their farms for the benefit of their soils. The coaching consists of weekly video conferences in August and September 2024. This is the third part, and it's about thermal composting in a pile bin. I will do this in two. You will see I start here with preparing a static aerated pile. If you have more brown materials than green materials, so it means you have a high carbon nitrogen ratio at farm level, for example, because you have an abundance of old fallen leaves, lots of small branches, lots of straw, source of abundant sawdust, things like that, then this way of making compost might be a good one for you. Respecting the thermophilic phase. There are different rules in different countries. Here I give you the rules for the United States. In Europe, it is a bit more complicated, but in the end, it comes down to the same purpose. Okay, in the United States, in a windrow system, you need thermophilic phase for 15 days. Then the temperature should be 55 to 70 degrees, and the pile must be turned 5 times in that period. Alternatively, you can make an aerated vessel or an aerated static pile. In that case, no turning is required if all is well aerated, and the temperature should be 55 to 70 degrees centigrade for at least 3 days. Although from scientific literature, we know that the optimum would be 9 days. So in comparison, an aerated pile bin over a windrow, as you can see over here, it takes some investment. But the big advantage is the efficiency of labor. And I think for farmers with a small farm, they have so much things to do already. So I think this is worthwhile trying. How to make an aerated static pile. Okay, so you choose, but preferably a site with a shade for at least the hottest part of the day, and for some sort of protection against heavy rain and draft wind. There you dig the desired number of holes in the ground with at least a diameter of 1.3 meters, so around 4 meters in circumference, and around 25 to 30 centimeters deep. You make the hole square, and you make sure that the bottom is horizontally level. On the floor of this hole, you put some old branches, a pallet, or some stones to support the bottom of the pile bin, and it should be well ventilated underneath, and maybe you even want to put up some open piles straight up to allow for extra ventilation from underneath. Why these shallow holes? From the horizons in the soil, there are distinct layers that you can distinguish. The first 5 centimeters we call the organic layer. There is all the organic things that are growing. From 5 to 25 centimeters, that's the surface soil. There is an accumulation of specific soil life to support whatever is growing on the soil. When you go further down, you find the subsoil with an accumulation of minerals where many roots of plants may persist. And next, down there is the substratum and with an accumulation of soluble fractions. You want to go as far as the subsoil to avoid anaerobic decomposition in the organic layer or the surface soil layer. But still, you want to attract a large biodiversity of life forms from the soil, like fungi, bacteria, and worms. So, what do you need for your construction? First of all, big and small wire netting. This one has 10 by 10 centimeters, and this is 1 by 1 centimeter or maybe even less. You need some wire. This looks like plastic. Well, it may be plastic, but it's a woven cloth, so it's not solid plastic. And you need a level. So both these racks, so the rack and the wire netting, you put on top of the branches or the stones or whatever you put in the hole, and that may prevent animals from underneath, like moles and voles. However, worms may still enter from underneath. Make sure that the surface is still horizontal, and construct pile bins like in the next few slides. Okay, so a woven, airy environmental cloth. So this is not solid plastic, it's, you may think, but it's a woven cloth, and you sew it onto a 10 by 10 match rack with a metal wire. So you make a cylinder like it is shown over on the right, with a diameter of 1.3 meters. So circumference is around about 4 meters, and it is about 1.3 meters high. And the advantage of this is that a round compost pile has no corners that can remain too cool. Everything can go up to the thermophilic phase. Okay, the diameter, then you put in an inner wire net, and the diameter of that is about 30 centimeters, so about 1 meter circumference. And if possible, you make the inner netting a bit higher than the outer construction, so when the top cover is on, the rain may drop off. Here, one is made where the inner net is a bit lower. I don't like it, but anyway. The distance between the inner netting and the outer cloth is less than 55 centimeters. That is because from science, from Dr. Johnson, we know that ventilation can come in through the environmental cloth for about 20 centimeters, and from this type of inner part about 30 centimeters. So when the distance, which is probably around 50 centimeters and less than 55, you'll be good, and ventilation can enter all around inside the pile. This bin construction you put in the ground on the layer for ventilation. You know, which was covered with the mesh rack and with the wire netting. You attach it with a few nails, and if you do, then it means that the top of the pile will be about 100 centimeters below the soil. Okay, Here's an alternative. I've seen this a lot in the United States. In this case, the bin construction can also be put on a pallet or on blocks, but just on the soil, and it is covered with landscape cloth, so the floor of the pile is about 20 centimeters above the ground, and the herbs beneath, the grass or whatever it is, cannot grow into the pile. Unfortunately, in such a system, it is harder for worms to enter from beneath. Anyway, another disadvantage is that as a result, the top of the pile may rise up to 150 centimeters above the soil. And if you're not a very tall person, this might be a bit high for you to fill up. So that may be inconvenient if you cannot look inside. Anyway, from these two alternatives, the conclusion in general is so that the floor of the bin is well ventilated, and it is either about 20 to 30 centimeters below the soil surface, or it is above the soil surface, but there cannot be a layer of growing material that might turn anaerobic. Okay, how big is such a pile bin? What's the capacity? Well, there's a formula for the calculation, which is pi by radius squared by height, all in centimeters. Fortunately, nowadays, if you put in at the internet, it will be calculated for you, so it is not very complicated. In this example I will give you, so it is pi by half of 130 centimeters, which was the diameter, by 130 centimeters high, and so it will be around 1700 liters. The inner cylinder capacity for extra air should be subtracted, and so that was pi by the half of 30 centimeters square, and in this case, of course, you take the height of the pile and not of the netting, because that's the height that the pile will be. So you subtract 100 liters, and so approximately the pile bin has the capacity of 1,600 liters. Now, if you have a wheelbarrow, and a normal wheelbarrow usually has a capacity of 100 liters, usually you don't fill it up completely, because then you spill too much on your way. So when you fill that up for 80%, it means that you need 20 wheelbarrows filled up for 80% to fill up your compost pile. Okay, now you start filling your compost pile, and you start, of course, with brown materials. There are two ways to make that brown material, which usually is very dry, to make it wet. Here, this lady, you see the brown materials all around her. She has put a shallow container on the floor with water, and she's scooping the material into that container, and next she's scooping the material from that container in the wheelbarrow, so the excessive water is leaking back into the container, and then she will bring it to the pile. The alternative is that you put brown material in the pile and you spray with water each time you made a layer of brown material. Of course, you can only do this if you have a water hose nearby. What can I say? At this stage, excessive water can drain out easily without the risk of drowning worms because they are still not there. But beware that the materials do not stick together by excessive watering, which can be the case, for example, with newspapers, but sometimes also with leaves. Okay, you fill up layer by layer. So you start at the bottom with brown materials, then you add green materials, and in between you may want to think of thin layers, a thin layer of chalk, eggshell or lava stone powder for neutralizing acidity. You may want to do that after a green layer, and think of mixing maybe some coconut core powder if you are afraid that the brown material may stick too much. When you filled up layer by layer, maybe also a layer of manure if you like, you fill it up to the top, but the last layer on top is again consists of brown materials. Check the moist in the pile bin before closing. It should not be too dry. If you want, you can insert an irrigation system for automatic watering. I come back to that later. You cover it with a woven cloth, and if the inner wire net is a bit higher up, you have a nice roof. Put some clippings or some stones that the wind will not blow away the cover. And here it is fixed. Here there is an example in the United States. This is a bit, they make a bit of an advancement, because over here they made 2 piles across from one another and 5 or 6 piles in a row. That's how much they think they need for their farm, and they make a very simple bow construction with this big wire net 10 by 10 centimeter on top of it, and then they cover it up with some transparent plastic, so it is covered against rain and drought and excessive sun. Okay. Here now I come to a very important issue, and that is keep a records book. And unfortunately for you, I have not encountered a good example of a records book on the internet, so you have to make one yourself. Maybe the people of the municipality can help you with it. What do you start putting down in your records book? Well, do it pile by pile. For example, your first pile, the date you started it and the date you finished filling it up, is if it wasn't at the same day. And you note how many wheelbarrows of what you used. For example, if you use 15 wheelbarrows of chopped moist wheat straw, 3.5 wheelbarrows of freshly clipped young grass, 1.5 wheelbarrows of chopped kitchen waste. As you remember from the previous part presentation, then you can calculate that you put in approximately 75% of brown materials and 25% of green materials. So this has a lot of brown materials content. The next pile, so you note the date, you started, you finished, if it's not on the same day. And for example, it's another day and you have different materials, like 12 wheelbarrows of chopped moist old brown leaves and some old branches from your trees. You have 2 wheelbarrows of chopped moist green and yellow leaves because they are very fresh. You have 3 wheelbarrows of pre-composted kitchen waste. I will tell you later what I mean with pre-composted, but anyway, think about kitchen waste. And you have goat manure, and you know that instead, in contrast with cow manure, goat manure is small by itself, and it dries out very easily, so it's not very sticky and you can use it well. So for this pile you calculate you have 60% brown materials, 25% green materials and 50% manure. So the latter altogether is 40%, so you expect a lower carbon nitrogen ratio in this pile. It's just an example. Okay, conclusion so far. The construction of an aerated compost bin is simple and cheap. Aerated compost bins are particularly worthwhile for the labor reduction in the thermophilic phase. You do not need to turn the pile. Protection from climatic extremes, rain, drought, even frost can be added by simple measures. Okay, here there are the references for this part so far. And if you have any questions, please send an email. We come back to it next time or I answer you. Thank you.